Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am super excited to share with all of you swatches, comparison swatches, and my initial review of the DANESSA MYRICKS eyeshadow sticks. And even though historically I haven't really been much of an eyeshadow stick person, I think this is actually my first time doing a dedicated eyeshadow stick review on my channel. But I love DANESSA MYRICKS, I love sparkly eyeshadows, and these have just had such good reviews. I had to pick up a few to share with you guys today. So if you're interested in learning more about these eyeshadow sticks, then just stick around. So to start out, it's kind of funny looking at these side by side because I feel like the topper shades on the bottom all sort of look the same because I happened to pick up the three most neutral tones. I have here Celeste and Nova, which is the one that I think has been the most popular because it's cool toned and neutral. And then I have Astra and Cassiopeia. Not really sure if I pronounced that correctly, but this is the rose gold one. And then Solar Flare and Lunar Veil. So this is kind of the warm toned neutral. So let's start with talking a little bit about the packaging. So these are duos. They actually completely separate with this internal part in between. So you can mix and match these to get any sort of duo you want, or you can store these separately. It is a decently intense magnet, so they do snap in place pretty quickly. But this also means that if you are storing these next to each other, they'll either repel each other like this or really stick, which, depending on how you store these might be a good or a bad thing. The packaging itself is fairly heavy and has that luxe metallic feel to it. When you snap off the cap, it does have this little plastic cap that you can remove to see the product. I have seen mixed things about whether or not you need to keep that cap there. Some people say yes, for sure you do. Some people say you don't. I'm keeping it on just, to be safe, but it does add an extra step in the process when you're using these. Not a big deal, but just thought I'd mention that since eyeshadow sticks are all about the quick one and done. So this is the shade Celeste. It's a really beautiful taupey shade, really great for cool toned neutral looks. And these set down pretty quickly, so you get a little bit of playtime initially, which you can see it blends out super easily. It looks really shiny. This is the metallic side. Each stick comes with one metallic and one foil. And here is Nova, which is the glitter foil side for this duo. Similarly, it kind of blends out nicely initially, but then really sets down quite quickly and then becomes quite budge proof. Let me actually turn down the brightness and zoom you guys in to make it easier for you to see these swatches. Really beautiful. And so the idea is you can first go in with the metallic and then kind of go over with the foil for some extra glimmer. So you can see this is what it looks like with the two layered on top of each other. Really nice and easy way to make a quick look. I have tried all of these on before. And let me actually just also give you guys full pigment swatches so you can see and compare those. When you first glide it on the skin, it does have a wet cooling sensation to it, but once the liquid evaporates, there's no more of that cooling feeling. Next, we have Cassiopeia. So this is a really pretty rose gold shade. This is the metallic side. Let me actually go in with a little bit more since I don't want to totally blend it out for you guys. You can see it's a little bit more similar to my skin tone, so it's a very natural looking shade. You can kind of build it up quite a bit. And then Astra is sort of a dual chromatic shade. It has like a gold to pink flip to it. And I feel like my finger is picking it all up as I'm trying to just tap it in for you guys so you can see the shade, but you can see, here just how much of a pigment payoff it is. And these are swapped. Here is the foil and here is the metallic shade, so apologies. I feel like I should cross my fingers somehow. But there you have those two. Let me give you again the full pigment swatches. This shade is really good if you're someone who doesn't really want much depth to your eyeshadow looks. You just want something that is really sparkly, really light, kind of similar to a skin tone shade, but with that rosy golden hue. Now let me also just put a little bit of the foil over here so you can see that's how it looks layered on top. The two shades are quite similar, so you know the main difference when you layer on top is you have that additional shine plus that dual chromatic effect. So for the last stick, we have Solar Flare. As I mentioned, this is the warmer of the sticks that I got. This is a really pretty bronzy shade here. And then Lunar Veil is like more of a golden shimmery shade, very foiled. Again, these are kind of flipped, apologies, but here you can see Lunar Veil at a brighter pigment opacity, and here is Solar Flare. And then here are the full pigment swatches. Ooh, it's such a nice cooling sensation when you first put it on. But as you can see, these are all very bright, very blendable. If you add Lunar Veil on top, this is how it looks. It just adds some nice shine to the look. And I do really like that these can be mixed and matched. I will say the shades I got are all kind of, you know, in the same family, so I don't really know that you necessarily need to get all three of these, but they are all really beautiful. I think this gives you a good sense of the most everyday friendly shades in this collection. So now go into the eye swatches. I've kept my makeup very minimal for now, just some concealer and some face primer. So we can go through each of these, remove them, and then I'll do a full face of makeup afterward with the last eyeshadow look. So let's start out with Solar Flare and Lunar Veil. So I'm just gonna put Solar Flare all over my lid so you guys can see. I really do like how easy these are to blend in. As you can see, that is very, very fast, very easy. This shade is super wearable, especially if you want that kind of bronzed goddess look. And then on the other eye, I'm gonna just put Lunar Veil all over the eye just to show you guys what it looks like. Normally, I wouldn't necessarily go in with the foil all over the eye, but you know, here's just kind of an eye swatch of both so you can see if you truly just want to do a one and done, the kind of look you get with both of these. But then the way I typically do it is I put the foil on top of the metallic like this, kind of concentrating it on the center and then just blending it in a bit. So then you get a little bit more dimension. You can also do it the other way and kind of add some of the metallic afterward just to add some depth to the outer portion of the eye like this. Now you can of course use a brush with these as well. Personally, I for the most part just use these on days when I don't want to go in with a brush, I don't want to wash anything, so I just want to use my fingers and really quickly go in and have a very fast and easy makeup look. Actually, let me just add a little bit more on this side just so you guys can see that metallic a bit more clearly. There we go, really pretty. So yeah, I love just how easy these are. They're very quick and easy to slap on. They don't budge after they set, so that's really nice. I will say though, if you have watery or oily eyelids, I would still recommend going in with the eye primer. Personally, I have kind of watery eyes, and so I do find that these are quite easy to remove with water or oil-based cleansers or just water in general. And so if you have very watery eyes, it might kind of get into your eyes if you don't have a primer. But with primer, it's perfect. It doesn't move for the whole day. So next I'm going in with Astra and Cassiopeia. So I'm gonna start out with Cassiopeia, which is the metallic shade. And this is the first one I bought, so I've used this more than the others. It's very quick and easy, especially because this rose gold shade is sort of similar to my skin tone. You know, it's not that much deeper or brighter. I feel like it's very, very forgiving because, you know, you don't even have to blend it very much, but as you can see, it just goes on very easily. I kind of built it up today so you can see it more clearly, but you can also do more of a light wash. And then on the other side, let me show you how Astra looks. Ooh, I actually never put Astra just all by itself. Astra definitely has some of that flaky quality, maybe a little bit more so than the other sticks that I have. Might just be the dual chrome nature kind of makes the flakiness more obvious. So I probably wouldn't put Astra just by itself for a look. I feel like it looks a little bit unfinished. But then you can, again, put this on top, which is normally how I like to use it. I just sort of put that on top of the lid and just blend it in a bit, and it provides just a bit of extra dimension and glitter to the center of the lid. And then going in with the metallic side on top of the glitter foil, just putting it sort of on the outside and the crease area. You could also do it like this. So I feel like with this duo, that kind of look doesn't work as well, just because the two colors aren't really that dissimilar. So I think it makes more sense to go in with the metallic as kind of a backdrop, and then the glitter just as some additional dimension, instead of adding the metallic on top. In any case though, the color is very forgiving, so if you are someone who is really new to makeup and wants to try out these formulas but is a little bit worried about blending them in, or how they'll kind of layer on top, I think this one is kind of the easiest to work with, just because the colors are not that dissimilar. All right, so let's finish off with Celeste and Nova. I feel like this one has been the crowd favorite. It's newer to my collection, so I haven't worn it that many times yet. So again, starting with the metallic all over the lids, this is Celeste. Just gonna blend out the corners with my finger. You can see that definitely adds more of a shadow. If this is a little bit too much, you can also just put it along the lash line. I think that would be a pretty nice look too. And then here's Nova, really, really bright and shimmery. This is also one that I probably wouldn't normally just put by itself, because the foils definitely look textured. So especially if you are someone who doesn't really like that flaky textured look on your lids, I would recommend not just doing the foil by itself. But here is the foil on top of the metallic. So you can see there, it just adds really nice dimension to the look. Makes the look a lot more complicated than it actually is. And then on the other side, I'm just going to run the stick sort of along the outer corner of the eye, and then blend that in a bit so you can see what that sort of look would be. There we go. So that gives you a little bit more of that like outer corner shadow effect, though still quite bright, because Nova is still, I think, kind of stealing the show there. I do think with this duo, this is one that I might actually like going in with a brush, because the cool tone, kind of almost grayish taupey shade is just one that on my skin I would want to be a little bit more careful with, because if it's in the wrong place, it can kind of look more bruise-y, whereas the other two I think just sort of, blend in more with my skin tone. But that said, this is still really easygoing, and definitely if you are someone who likes cool toned neutral looks, this is the go-to in this collection, because the rest of the shades are generally either warmer toned or very much not neutral. Like, I have been eyeing that one that has sort of the like midnight blue metallic shade, and then the like lavender reflect foil. That one looks so pretty, but it's also one that I feel like I wouldn't actually reach for as much as these more basic ones. So I went off camera to finish off the rest of my look, so now we're ready for the final eyeshadow look. So for this one, I thought I would use some brushes to apply the eyeshadow. So I have here my Rephr 33 to sort of blend everything in the crease. And I'm gonna go in with Celeste and Nova, since, like I said, that one's kind of newer to my collection. So I feel like this will be a good way to further see how I feel about this shade. So I'm going to just kind of first put this on the outer portion of the eyes, just to see how much blendability I can get with this. And I did put eyeshadow primer down, so actually, yeah, it kind of sticks and doesn't really move much, so okay, that's good to know. Let me put the same on the other side, since this time we're doing same look on both. But yeah, definitely with primer down, this doesn't budge that much. I mean, I feel like I'm still able to kind of zhuzh out the edges, but Just something to note if you are someone who wants to use this for a more precise application. And actually, because that is just kind of like fixed in place, let me actually go in with the metallic shade Cassiopeia all over the lid, since I feel like that might make this a more interesting look. I usually like to keep the darker shades kind of concentrated near the outer corners, and so here we have something that's a little bit more brightening, a little easier to blend out, but yeah, definitely sets pretty rapidly on top of primer. On the plus side, that means it's a very quick eyeshadow look to do. And then I guess actually, since we're doing a hybrid look, let's top things off with Lunar Veil. So I'm just trying to see how many different looks I can get. So yeah, let's just put this on top. Why not? So you can see that adds some really nice sparkle. Kind of looks silvery almost. A lot less warm when you put it on top of this shade. Okay, that is some nice shine. And then let's see, what should I do for the lower lash line? I guess maybe since we're just experimenting here, I'll go in with Solar Flare on the lower lash line. See if I can lightly zhuzh the edges there. Adds a little bit of warmth to the lower lash line. And then I'll go in with Astra, and I'll put this kind of in that inner third area for some extra shine and some dual chrome dimension. Ooh, that's pretty. Fortunately, since all of these are very everyday shades, I feel like they kind of all work together. And then I think the only one I haven't done yet is Lunar Veil. So let's actually use that as inner corner highlight. So I'm gonna just put that in the inner corner area. And yes, I'm just using that one brush for everything because it's really just to lightly zhuzh out the edges. Alrighty, there we go. So this is actually all 6 shades on my eyes. What do you guys think? And here we have the final look with eyeliner. So before I get into my overall review, let's go in with some comparison swatches. So here I have the DANESSA MYRICKS swatched. So we have the metallic shades followed by the foiled shades. You can see the foiled shades are quite similar. I mean, there's definitely some differences, but overall, I don't know that you need so many of them like I have here today. The first comparisons will be with my Laura Mercier Caviar Stix. I've actually been wearing these a lot recently because they're just so easy for a quick one and done look. So we have this rose gold shade first, which I wanted to compare with the rose gold metallic here. So this is the shade Modern Rose. And let me actually zoom you guys out a little bit. So here you can see Modern Rose is maybe a little bit deeper, slightly more cool toned, but overall quite similar. Just less shimmery than either the metallic or the foiled shade from DANESSA MYRICKS. Then we have Dark Cacao, which I'm going to compare up here. So Dark Cacao is way deeper and is not really shimmery at all. I mean, it's not like completely flat matte, but way more matte in comparison to these shades. And then we have the Rose Gold shade. So I'm gonna put that over here in between the Lunar Veil shade and the Astra shade. So you can see that it is more similar to Astra in tone, but it doesn't have that dual chrome effect. And it's so much more satin in finish in comparison to the DANESSA MYRICKS. Next, I have my Bobbi Brown eyeshadow stick. I'm putting this over here because it's the shade Incandescent, which is also a dual chrome shade that flips between pink and gold. You can see this one is very satin in finish, but you can see that kind of dual chrome effect. It's much more pink in the center and more orangey on the sides. But yeah, the biggest difference is the finish. I do find with these other eyeshadow sticks, they do tend to crease on the lids more than the DANESSA MYRICKS, but they don't necessarily get into my eyes as much. So with all of these, I do need to use an eye primer, but if I don't use an eye primer, these crease, whereas the DANESSA MYRICKS can kind of irritate the eyes. So now let's get into some liquid eyeshadows. I have a bunch from Lisa Eldridge. So let's start out with Emily, which I think is most similar to Lunar Veil. So I'm just gonna put that over here. You can see that it's quite taupey. Actually, let's also put that over here because I think actually, yeah. You can see it's a warmer taupe in comparison to Celeste, and it is less shiny in comparison to Lunar Veil and a little bit more brown. But in terms of finish, it's quite similar to the metallic side of the DANESSA MYRICKS Stix. Then we have Anais, which is a more cool toned shade in the line, almost a little bit greenish. So yeah, you can definitely see quite a big difference here between any of the others. Then I have Titania, so let's see how this compares to the Solar Flare shade. Okay, yeah, Titania is way more dark. It's sort of like an antique brown almost. Very different. And then we have Angelica from Lisa Eldridge. I'm putting that here because I feel like it's quite in line with the rose gold theme, and it's definitely more pinky than the rest of these over here. And again, the finish is kind of like the metallic, not nearly as bright as the foiled. And then finally we have Lauren, which is kind of a golden shade, so really no direct comparisons, but you can see it there next to the others. I do really love these liquid eyeshadows from Lisa Eldridge. These are super easy to just blend out on the eye as well. So I would recommend those too. I would say they're just a tiny bit more work than the eyeshadow sticks, but these are all kind of really easy one and dones. And then finally, I have my Pat McGrath liquid eyeshadow in Platinum Bronze. So I'm just gonna put that here as well. And you can see that one is kind of darker than any of the other shades that we have here today. And it is much more metallic and a bit less bright in comparison to the rest of these. So here we have a close-up of the swatches in case you want to look at any of them more carefully. So zooming you guys out, in terms of my overall thoughts about these eyeshadow sticks, I do think they are a really lovely, easy way to incorporate sparkle into your everyday makeup routine. So recently, for example, I haven't actually been whipping out my makeup brushes that much on a daily basis. I've been so busy that normally if I put on any makeup, it'll just be in front of a mirror with my fingers. And so I have found myself gravitating for eyeshadow sticks for the first time in my life. And so it's nice that these came out right around now because it is a way to still get that really beautiful shiny effect that I'm used to from like my Pat McGrath eyeshadows, but to do so really quickly and easily with just a few swipes. Now, if you are someone who has a lot of texture on your lids or doesn't really like that chunky, slightly glittery look, I wouldn't necessarily recommend these because the foiled shades definitely have that textured look to them, which on the one hand can be really beautiful and dimensional, on the other hand could be unflattering depending on how you feel. So if you're someone who wants more of a smoother look on the lids, then I would definitely recommend really any of these other eyeshadows, especially I would say the Laura Mercier Caviar sticks are just very easygoing and very minimally textured while still adding a little bit of shine to the lids. These definitely pack much more oomph to them. In addition, I will say I kind of wish that she sold these as individual sticks instead of these duos. I mean, it's a cool concept and it's nice that you can mix and match, but honestly, like if you are someone who mostly wants the more neutral shades, I think you'll find that the foiled ones will start to kind of be redundant after a while because, you know, there's only so many colors like a really light foil can be, and especially layered on top of other shades, they all start to look a little bit similar. So from that perspective, I kind of wish we could buy these individually and then, you know, create our own duos. But on the whole, I am really impressed and really a fan of love these eyeshadow sticks. They're really fun and easy to use, and as long as you use them on top of an eyeshadow primer, then I think you won't have any issues in terms of creasing or longevity. And if you're someone who doesn't have watery or oily lids, you can probably use this without primer and also be fine. I would love to hear in the comments though what you guys think about this. How has the formula worked out for you? Do you have any shades in particular that you really love? For me, I'm debating whether to keep all three of these because they all kind of, give a somewhat similar vibe, and I wonder if I should pick up one of the more colorful ones instead. So if you're interested in updates on that, definitely let me know. But that's it for today's video. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!